The soft glow of crimson lanterns flickered along the stone corridors, their eerie light casting elongated shadows on the polished floor. Gabriel Voss adjusted the cuff of his jacket, his sharp green eyes scanning the opulent chamber before him. The air smelled of incense, something rich, smoky, and slightly metallic, as if tradition itself had a scent. Tonight was supposed to be a simple business transaction. He had saved the life of Lord Curzon, a Zalvith noble whose influence stretched across half the sector. And in return, Gabriel expected nothing more than a diplomatic favor, perhaps trade access to restricted colonies or exclusive mining rights. Instead, he stood inside the heart of the Zalvith noble house, being offered something far more personal. The towering alien before him, clad in ceremonial battle robes, gave a deep bow, his scaled brow touching the ground. "Gabriel Voss," Lord Curzon rumbled, his voice like thunder rolling through deep caverns. "You saved my life. And in the laws of my people, such a debt can only be repaid in the most sacred way." Gabriel's jaw tensed. "Lord Curzon, I was under the impression this was a diplomatic exchange." Curzon straightened, his golden eyes filled with unshakable resolve. "It is. You saved my life, and I grant you my greatest treasure, my daughter, Salithra." A tense silence settled between them. Gabriel's fingers twitched at his side. He had heard stories of the Zalvith's rigid honor code, but this was beyond expectation. Before he could refuse, a figure stepped forward from the shadows. Salithra. She was unlike any Zalvith he had ever encountered. Most of her kind were imposing, their ridged exoskeletal plates making them look like living obsidian statues. But she was refined, almost delicate by their standards. Midnight blue markings ran down the length of her dusky lavender skin, and her eyes, brilliant silver, held a piercing intelligence. A veil of fine silken mesh covered the lower half of her face, emphasizing the aristocratic curve of her jaw. She did not bow. She did not flinch. She simply stared at him with an expression Gabriel couldn't quite read. "You honor my house, human," she said, her voice smooth yet edged with quiet defiance. Gabriel exhaled through his nose, his mind racing. "Lady Salithra, My lord," she corrected, lifting her chin. "If I am to be given, I expect to be addressed with my proper title." Gabriel let out a slow, measured breath. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't pleading for freedom. She was challenging him. Curzon folded his arms across his chest. "She is yours to command, Gabriel Voss. The bond is sealed." Salithra turned toward her father, her silver gaze unreadable. "And if he refuses?" A sharp silence filled the chamber. The unspoken question lingered. What would happen to her if Gabriel walked away? Would she be disgraced? Given to another? He knew enough about Zalvith culture to understand that debts of honor could not be undone. Gabriel looked into her eyes, searching for something: anger, desperation, hope. But all he found was patience. "I don't take what isn't freely given," he said at last. Salithra's expression didn't waver. "Then earn it." A ripple of surprise passed through the gathered nobles. Curzon's heavy brow furrowed, but he did not protest. Gabriel's lips curved into a slow, wolfish smile. "Interesting. Then let's see where this leads," he murmured. Salithra's silver eyes flashed. "Indeed, human." And just like that, the debt was sealed. The scent of burning resin curled in the air, thick and heady, as Gabriel Voss followed Salithra through the arched corridors of her father's estate. The walls, carved from smooth obsidian, gleamed under the dim bioluminescent sconces, casting wavering patterns across the floor. The atmosphere was both ancient and suffocating, as if the weight of centuries pressed in from all sides. Salithra walked ahead of him, her movements fluid and measured, betraying neither hesitation nor eagerness. The ceremonial veil still covered the lower half of her face, obscuring whatever expression she might have worn. Gabriel exhaled, keeping pace. "So, what happens now?" She didn't turn. "That depends, human." A smirk tugged at his lips. "On what?" At that, she stopped, pivoting to face him with sharp precision. On whether you intend to treat this arrangement as my father expects, she said, her silver eyes locking onto his. Gabriel studied her in the low light. Even among her kind, she was striking, refined, intelligent, and carrying herself with the poise of someone who had been raised to navigate the treacherous waters of nobility. But there was something else beneath the surface. A quiet defiance. Your father expects me to treat you as property, he said, his voice low, deliberate. I don't do that. Salithra's expression remained unreadable. Then what do you intend? He took a step closer. To figure out what you want from this. A flicker of something, surprise perhaps, passed through her gaze before vanishing behind that practiced mask of control. What I want, she repeated, her tone careful. Gabriel nodded. Your father's debt is settled, but that doesn't mean you and I have to play by his rules. She tilted her head slightly, as if appraising him in a new light. You assume I dislike the arrangement. That gave him pause. For all his expectations, he hadn't considered that possibility. Was she bound by duty? Trapped by her father's will? Or was there something else, something she wasn't yet revealing? Salithra lifted a hand, undoing the delicate clasp at her jaw. The veil slid away, revealing the full curve of her lips and the sharp angles of her face. Without it, she looked less like an untouchable noble and more like a woman. I was raised to believe that debts must be paid, she said, her voice softer now, though no less firm. That honor is more than a word, it is the foundation upon which our people stand. She paused, as if considering her next words carefully. But I was also raised to believe that a warrior should not surrender unless bested. Gabriel's smirk returned. And you don't think you've been bested? For the first time, a glint of amusement crossed her features. Not yet. He chuckled, crossing his arms. Then what would it take? Salithra's expression grew serious once more. If I am to belong to you, human, I will not be a prisoner. Nor a token of gratitude. She stepped forward, her presence suddenly more imposing despite her measured composure. If you wish to claim me, you must prove yourself worthy. Gabriel raised an eyebrow. You're giving me a challenge? She inclined her head. A test. A measure of intent. His pulse thrummed. He had expected tension, resistance, perhaps even quiet resentment. But this? This was something else entirely. What kind of test? He asked. Salithra held his gaze for a long moment before speaking. We leave this place. Together. Away from my father's influence. Gabriel frowned. You want to run? She shook her head. I want to see what kind of man you truly are, without the weight of obligation, without the expectations of my people. Her eyes narrowed slightly. If you are as different as you claim, prove it. A slow, wicked grin spread across Gabriel's face. You're bold, princess. Salithra's lips curled slightly at the title. And you are reckless. Which makes me wonder, are you willing to take the risk? He exhaled, studying her, then finally gave a nod. All right, he murmured. Let's see where this leads. Her silver eyes gleamed. And just like that, the true game began. The night air crackled with an eerie stillness as Gabriel and Salithra slipped through the outer courtyard of the estate. The shadows stretched long, distorted by the flickering amber glow of the hovering lanterns above. The thick scent of burning resin clung to his senses, a reminder that they were still within her father's reach, for now. Salithra moved with deliberate grace, her every step measured, controlled. Her ceremonial robes, now replaced by a more practical dark tunic and fitted trousers, allowed for quiet movement. Even so, Gabriel could tell she was used to command, not stealth. Keep close, he murmured, scanning the stone walkway ahead. I am not some delicate creature, she whispered back, her tone edged with amusement. I do not need coddling. Gabriel smirked but said nothing. She was proud, he had expected that. But pride wouldn't help them if her father's guards caught wind of their plan. A towering gate loomed in the distance, beyond which the dense wilderness of Velker Forest sprawled, untamed and unpredictable. That was their destination, the only place they could vanish from the watchful eyes of Salithra's father. And yet, as they neared the gate, Gabriel felt a ripple of tension crawl up his spine. Too easy. He caught Salithra's wrist just as she reached for the control panel. Wait! Her silver eyes flickered in the dim light, questioning. Gabriel scanned their surroundings. The silence felt unnatural, pressing in too thickly. His fingers tightened around her wrist. Then he saw it, the faint shimmer in the air, a barely perceptible distortion near the gate's locking mechanism. A cloaked figure stood there, motionless, waiting. Damn it! We're not alone, Gabriel muttered. Salithra followed his gaze, her expression unreadable. Then, without hesitation, she reached down and pressed a hidden switch on her belt. The distortion flickered, revealing a tall, armored figure, a Valkyrian warrior, draped in obsidian black battle gear, his elongated helmet obscuring his features. A guard. And not just any guard, one of her father's elite. Salithra's voice was smooth, controlled. Do you stand in my way? The guard straightened, his voice a deep rumble beneath the helmet. I was ordered to ensure you did not leave, my lady. Gabriel tensed. One wrong move, and this could turn bloody fast. Salithra took a step forward, chin lifted. And if I order you to step aside? A pause. Then, the guard inclined his head slightly. I serve your father, not you. Well, that answered that. Gabriel shifted, muscles coiling. He wasn't in the mood for a drawn-out fight, but he'd be damned if he let a glorified bodyguard drag them back inside. Before he could react, Salithra moved. Fast. A flash of silver, her blade, unsheathed in one smooth motion. The guard barely had time to react before she struck, pivoting with a dancer's precision, slicing upward. The warrior deflected, but she was already stepping inside his guard, driving her knee into his side. Gabriel exhaled. Hell. She didn't need coddling, indeed. The guard staggered back, but before he could recover, Gabriel surged forward. He caught the warrior's arm, twisting hard, forcing the armored figure off balance. Salithra capitalized instantly, driving the hilt of her weapon into the weak point beneath the helmet. The guard collapsed with a heavy thud. Unconscious. Salithra exhaled, stepping back. Satisfied? Gabriel chuckled. Remind me never to get on your bad side. She sheathed her blade, eyes gleaming. Then do not give me reason. He grinned and turned toward the control panel. A few quick keystrokes, and the gate hissed open. Beyond it, the wilderness stretched, vast and unyielding. Thick vegetation pulsed with bioluminescent veins, casting eerie blue-green glows across the dense undergrowth. Far above, the twin moons of Velker loomed, silent witnesses to their escape. Salithra hesitated for just a fraction of a second before stepping forward. Gabriel followed, the gate sliding shut behind them with a final, definitive hiss. There was no turning back now. They had won the first battle. But the war had only just begun. The jungle swallowed them whole. Thick, towering trees wove a canopy so dense that the twin moons of Velker barely penetrated, leaving the path ahead bathed in ghostly blue luminescence. Gabriel moved first, his steps careful yet sure, navigating the uneven terrain with practiced ease. Behind him, Salithra followed, her movements fluid but edged with tension. Neither spoke for a long while. The quiet wasn't comforting. It was the kind that hunted, the kind that warned of unseen dangers lurking just beyond the glow of the bioluminescent flora. Finally, Salithra broke the silence. Where exactly are we going? Gabriel glanced back. There's an old supply outpost about 10 kilometers north of here. If we can reach it, I can call in a favor. She arched an eyebrow. And you trust this favor? He smirked. I wouldn't call it trust. More like knowing who owes me. Salithra exhaled sharply, but didn't argue. She had no choice but to rely on him now, and they both knew it. They pressed on, weaving through thick underbrush, ducking beneath low-hanging vines. The jungle pulsed with alien life, chirps, clicks, and distant howls, each an eerie reminder that they weren't alone. Gabriel didn't like it. Something about the way the sounds shifted made his instincts prickle. Salithra must have felt it too, because she murmured, "Something watches us." "Yeah," Gabriel muttered. "I feel it." The moment he said it, the jungle erupted. A blur of movement, a shadow darting through the trees. Then another. And another. Gabriel barely had time to react before a figure lunged from the foliage. He ducked, barely avoiding a wickedly curved blade as it sliced through the air where his head had been. Valkyrian hunters. Damn it! Salithra spun, drawing her blade in one smooth motion. The first attacker barely had time to register before she drove the weapon into his side, twisting as she withdrew. The hunter collapsed with a strangled gurgle. Gabriel wasn't idle. His fist connected with another's jaw, sending the figure sprawling into the underbrush. He followed up with a sharp kick, knocking the enemy's weapon away. More shadows closed in. Salithra pressed her back against his, breathing hard. "They knew we'd run." Gabriel clenched his jaw. "Looks that way." The hunters moved in tandem, circling, waiting for an opening. Gabriel knew their type: silent, efficient, deadly. He'd fought worse, but not without a weapon of his own. Salithra tightened her grip on her blade. "We make for the ridge. If we can get to higher ground." One of the hunters lunged. She met him head-on, steel flashing in the dim light. Gabriel took the opportunity to grab a fallen weapon, yanking a short, serrated dagger from the dirt. Another attacker charged him. This time, Gabriel didn't dodge. He caught the hunter's wrist, twisting hard enough to dislocate it before slamming the pommel of the dagger into his opponent's skull. The figure crumpled instantly. Beside him, Salithra dispatched another with ruthless efficiency, a flicker of silver and dark blood staining the air. The remaining hunters hesitated. Then, without warning, they retreated, vanishing into the jungle as swiftly as they had come. Gabriel exhaled. "That's not a good sign." Salithra wiped her blade clean. "They were testing us." He nodded grimly. "Which means they're waiting for something." She glanced up at the thick canopy. "Or someone." A deep, resounding thud echoed through the jungle. Then another. Footsteps. Heavy. Measured. Gabriel turned, tension coiling in his gut. And then he saw him. A massive figure stepped through the foliage, standing easily a head taller than any of the hunters before. His armor gleamed a dull obsidian, etched with gold filigree, a mark of station. A high-ranking warrior. Salithra inhaled sharply. General Kurthos. Gabriel recognized the name. Her father's most trusted enforcer. Kurthos stopped a few paces away, surveying them with unreadable eyes. "Lady Salithra," he rumbled. "This is reckless." She lifted her chin. "That is not your concern." He tilted his head slightly, gaze flicking to Gabriel. "And yet here we are." Gabriel tightened his grip on the dagger. "Let me guess. You're here to drag her back?" Kurthos regarded him for a long moment before answering. "I am here to deliver an offer." That gave them both pause. Salithra's expression didn't waver. "An offer?" The general nodded. "Your father is willing to reconsider his stance, provided you return willingly." Gabriel snorted. "I'm guessing that reconsideration doesn't extend to me." Kurthos' gaze was sharp. "No. It does not." Salithra's fingers curled into fists. "And if I refuse?" The general exhaled, almost disappointed. "Then you will be hunted." Gabriel shifted, instinct screaming. There was something about Kurthos' tone that unsettled him. Not a threat. A certainty. Salithra took a slow step forward. "You know my father is wrong." Kurthos was silent. Then, in a rare moment of candor, he murmured, "I know what will happen if you continue on this path." A beat of silence passed. Then he turned, stepping back into the jungle. "You have until dawn." And just like that, he was gone. The jungle swallowed him whole. Gabriel exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Well, that's not ominous at all." Salithra remained still, jaw tight. "He's giving us a chance." Gabriel watched her carefully. Do you want to take it? Her silver eyes met his, unwavering. No. He grinned. Good. Then we keep moving. The ridge was still ahead. And so was their freedom. But dawn was coming. And so was the hunt.